much food. So little space. Perfect.
Hi everybody, it's Robbie from Southern California, and today I want to talk about growing in containers, container growing, container gardening, and why I happen to like totes. You can call them storage containers, whatever you want to call them, why I like them. And this is my personal opinion. A lot of you like grow bags. Some of you go and buy the big garden beds, the ones that are on tables and they've got legs and they're really big. My brother went and bought that. You can buy that all over. And they're really big and you can grow all kinds of stuff in the garden. But I'm going to tell you today why I happen to really like storage containers or totes, whatever you want to call them. And I have a reason. I have a madness to what I like growing in. I grow a lot of mine in 18-gallon ones, but you can go bigger. They have them, 30 gallons, whatever you want, whatever type of tote you like. I happen to like the 18 gallons. Number one, they're cheap. You can pick these up for $5 and $6. I'm going to get more into that. I have so much more to say, but today I'm just going to talk about that. You can get them in 18 gallons. They're like $5. Walmart's got them, Target's got them, all the hardware stores got them. Everybody has them. Find them at thrift stores for $1 and $2. Sometimes when you go into the store, if there's no lids, they'll discount them and give them to you in the store a lot cheaper. Try to get the ones that flex a little bit. See these flex? You don't want something that's super hard plastic. If it's super hard plastic, they can crack after a while in the sun. They might only last a year. But the ones that have a flex to them, I've had those in my garden now 5 years, going strong. Everything is great. So a little flex, and I have found the ones that are made in the United States, Sterilite, Rubbermaid, they all flex. You'll know. If you tap on it, it sounds like a hard piece of plastic. Try to stay away from those unless they're so cheap. You can go ahead and grow in them, but just keep in mind they don't tend to last as long. I haven't bought any yet online that have been hard plastic. I've been buying them online and having them shipped here, and they've been all really good, but then most of them I've been getting have been Sterilite. I don't care what kind it is, just see if they flex. They also tend to be on the bottom of 5. There's a triangle. Those are the same plastics they use in the grocery stores when they sell you food, be it meat, cottage cheese, yogurt, all kinds of dairy, desserts. They all come in 5s. It can be 1, 2, 4, or 5. 1 is your water bottles. They're clear. That's the number 1. Clear plastic tends to have the UVs go through them and eventually break. I like something with color in them already. So a color with a soft flex to it is good. Don't use anything with a 3. That's the only thing you have to remember. If it's got a 3, generally those are plastics that they might have used for, let's say they were oil cans or tires or something bad was stored in them at one time and you don't know what's left in the plastic. The safe plastics, again, are 1, 2, 4, or 5. And you will find that a lot of them in the grocery stores are 2, not counting the water bottles that are 1, or they'll be a 5. You don't see too many 4s, but either one of those are good. These are 5s. So I really, really love the totes because they're just perfect for growing in and they're fine. Some people say they leach out because they're plastic. Keep in mind those growing beds that you buy that are on legs, they're plastic too. And you can get wooden ones. They will break down. Wood breaks down. So they all will break down. These seem to last a long time. As far as leaching plastic, they got a bad rap because people were buying water bottles, and they were leaving cases of water bottles in their car. Car gets to 180 degrees, and at that point, it is releasing some plastic into the water, and they were drinking the water, and that's when the bad rap came. These are not going to get 180 degrees. If they're getting 180 degrees in your garden, let me tell you something, you've got bigger problems than your garden, all right? We all have bigger problems. So don't worry about that. The soil in here stays much cooler than even the air. So it works out fantastic. Let me talk about more why I like totes and what's the reason. I'm already getting ready to plant in this one, starting to put leaves in. The thing is, each tote is an individual garden as far as what plants you're going to put in here. So let's say I want to put a zucchini in here, maybe even with a tomato plant. I can cater to this and know that I'm growing those two and feed them rotting leaves and water. Just feed them and take care of them. There is no competition with those two plants. Whatever plants I put in here, there's no competition. The roots aren't going to go after another plant growing somewhere else down the side here or this way. They are strictly going to deal with whatever you plant per tote. If you've got a long garden bed and you buy one of these that are 6-8 foot long, your plants that are being planted here 6 foot down the line are going to be competing with what's down there, and they'll send roots out over there and take nutrients from there as well as nutrients from them. So you have full control on your garden when you're growing in a smaller tote. My daughter grew 6 zucchini plants in one a little bigger than this and grew a massive amount of zucchini. I told her it was too many plants for one tote. She said she was doing it anyway. She did it and grew a ton of zucchini. So the thing was, those zucchini plants only had to compete with each other, and as long as she was throwing in some leaves and stuff and it would rot in there, they did fine. The other thing is, if you get a big bed and you're going to grow a raised bed in a great big 6 foot bed, you have to put soil in the whole thing. And for instance, my brother went and bought a few of those to set up in his yard. And when he went to get soil at the hardware store, he was amazed how much it cost him because he had to set up the whole bed. So whether he only wanted to plant 1 or 2, let's say broccolis or something here, and he didn't want to plant on the other side of the 6 foot bed, he still had to get the whole bed prepped and ready to go, even if he only wanted to set up 1 plant. Because you can't water here, have no soil down there, where's the water going to go? It's going to just run out. So he had to fill up the whole bed, which cost him close to $100 in soil because he didn't make his own. So he had to fill the whole thing up, and he tried to keep it low so he didn't have to put that much soil in there and kind of keep the cost down, and it went down right away. You could see the soil was dropping because when you get a big bag of soil, you start watering it, it's going to compress as you're watering it and taking care of it, so you really need more than you think you need. And that's the other thing I don't like about those, is because you have to prep and get the whole bed ready, even if you're going to do your plants in stages. If you're just going to do lettuce, you don't want to grow 100 heads of lettuce, or let's say romaine lettuce, 100 of them. You want to start with a few and then maybe get some more, including radishes, carrots. You want to pace your garden. But when you buy a 6 foot bed, you've got to get the whole bed prepped and water the whole bed, even if there's no plants down there, as you rotate your garden or grow them in stages. The whole bed's got to be done. When you do them in a tote, I could grow all my 1 lettuce in here, a whole bunch of lettuce in here, the next tote over. I can get that ready, and as this one's growing, I can get the other one ready. Each is an individual garden, and each has got their own water reservoir. So if you're pulling the holes up, they've got water and nutrients left on the bottom that they're going to take as they grow, and you're growing in 1 small tote. Some people use buckets, same thing. They're working with 1 bucket. So their plants are growing and per bucket, and there's no competition. It's the competition as well as prepping the whole thing, whether you're growing in it or not. So it's a lot of work. These are little things to think about as you set up. This is why I love totes. I don't care if it's a 18-gallon versus a 30-gallon. It doesn't really matter. The point is, you can pace your garden, like my chair garden back there. When I set up the chair garden, I paced it. I did 1 container every few days because I didn't have a lot of time. I had so much to do around here and work and stuff. So I paced 1 tote at a time. If I had set that up and that was 1 unit, that horseshoe back there was 1 unit, I would have had to come out here and get the whole unit prepped. I would have had to put soil in the whole thing, get my leaves all in there, all at the same time. I would have had to put whatever I was going to do. If I was composting in place, I had to get the whole thing all composted in place and then put the soil on. It would have all had to have been done at the same time. But when you're using smaller containers, you can take your time. That's why when I start to set up a new chair garden, which I will, I'm going to do one chair at a time and do just little bits at a time. You have the freedom to pace yourself whatever way you want, and you're not hindering your plants. So you can start in one tote and put some radishes here, put some lettuce here, maybe some carrots here, and then think, gee, I like the way the carrots are growing. I'm going to get some more carrots in the next garden bed and set up your next tote. But again, think of it, 8-foot bed, you've got to get the whole thing soil ready. Then you've got your soil sitting there with nothing growing in there until you plant, but you have to water the whole thing, because if you water half of it, it's going to draw. So let's say you're only going to water where you've got your stuff growing on this side. The soil is not going to stay dry and wait for you to plant in it. It's going to suck the water away from the plants that are growing. So you've got to get the whole bed prepped, whether it's all being grown in or not. This is why I like containers. I should own stocks and containers. Don't worry, I get nothing for containers. That's my personal preference. That's the reason I like them so much. It makes gardening so easy for anybody. Now, you don't have to put totes or containers on a chair or a bench. I'm sitting on a bench, which you could. If you don't want to bend, you've got your garden at your fingertips. I could put a tote right here and sit and service it, and I don't have to bend down. But you can put your totes on the ground. Now, when you put them on the ground, before you make your holes, I use my soldering iron. I love having a soldering iron to make the holes. At that point, think about how you are going to grow. Do you want to grow something on the ground? So let's say this tote is on the ground. So let's say I make the holes only here. Or I could do it on the other side or the other side of the tote if I wanted to. You can plant next to these holes, because when you water your container, this 18-gallon container, the water's going to go down, the plant's going to suck up what it wants, it might retain a little water, and then the excess water is going to drain out. When it drains out, that is valuable resource. That water's got all kinds of nutrients in it from your soil, because I load mine full of leaves, which is constantly a constant plant food for my plants. That's why they grow so good. But that water coming out that's going into your ground is great water. It's like being fed a compost tea every day. So you want to know where this is going. So you could catch it and rewater all your plants and save water that way, as well as feeding your plants every day. Or you could sit this on the ground and grow something next to it. Be it anything. It could be walking onions, a zucchini plant, flowers, whatever you want next to your tote. So think about everything you do and make the whole unit work for you. I like the idea that I can come into my chair garden and not have to bend down. I can sit down and service it. I can stand up and service it. It's all at my fingertips. I don't have to get on my hands and knees and go through and pull out all the brown leaves. I can just walk through, see right away. I'm right up there. It's level with me to see. I can see the leaves that are yellowing and be able to pull the yellow leaves off, because yellow leaves aren't doing the plant any good. In fact, the plant is trying to take care of yellow leaves. So when you take the yellow leaves off, throw it in a bucket to compost it later, the plant will create new green leaves and concentrate on new growth. So you'll find that when you grow in totes or containers, that your plants look better because you're actually taking care of them better. It's got a constant water source. And the other thing too with containers, here in Southern California, we are hot and dry. We've been going through a heat wave. This is plastic. Water cannot evaporate this way. It's not going to evaporate on the bottom. It's not going to evaporate on the sides. There's only one way for this water to go out besides draining out the excess water. Gravity's pulling it up. You can only go up through the top. So you could layer and put more plants and pots and things, rocks, whatever you want on the top. Stepping stones are always a layer, not on here, but in your garden, that's also a layer that holds water. There's only one way for evaporation, and that's on the top. So the plants here do so much better in totes because they're not losing water. Even in the ground, they lose water. You have them in the ground, it's going to dry out over there, and then the ground's going to suck whatever water there is, like a sponge is sucking away. So I find that with totes, you have much more control. And yes, layer, layer, layer. I always say that. And the layering is simply some flower pots or rocks. Something on the top. Don't cover the whole thing. The soil needs oxygen. It needs to breathe. But just areas, so when you pick up a flower pot, you might find earthworms under there, but you'll always find it damp under a flower pot because the water starts to evaporate, goes up, and it stops where the flower pot is because it can't go out, and then the roots can go over there and grab some of the moisture. So you layer if you're in a warm area. And if you're in a really wet area, then you want, like, really getting a lot of rain, then you want to make sure you have really well drainage because you don't want this filling up with water. You can even put some holes on the top just in case it's raining that hard. You want to make sure the water's draining out because you don't want to leave your plants in water. So there's so many things you could do with totes and why I like them so much, because for me, people have asked me, do I grow in grow bags? No, I've tried it once. The problem here is we're so dry at times that the grow bags are a material. I'm not putting grow bags down. If it's working for you, that's great. It will evaporate. The whole thing evaporates. The whole bag will evaporate. It's hard in the deserts to grow too in grow bags, I've heard from a lot of subscribers, because everything evaporates. So now you've got evaporation here with a grow bag. You've got evaporation on all four sides, or if it's round, the entire circumference. And you constantly have to make sure there's water in there. And you can sit them in water if you wanted to, but it will eventually run out the bag. But that's one way of getting it to wick up. So as far as what works here for me are totes. Totes work the best. I tried all kinds of things, and when I ended up finding these 5 years ago, these have been fantastic. Gary swore he was not going to use totes. He just had me order him over 10 totes. His garden's going to be full of totes. You'll see that as it comes. He loves his totes. My daughter said, oh no, I'm not going to grow in totes. I'm going to grow in the ground. You know what she dropped off for my husband the other day? She told Gary to go down and pick them up. 18 lids! 18 lids she dropped off here. So we know how many totes she bought. She's doing what I said. She's putting the totes all over her garden. The water comes out, is feeding their garden. They've got a small backyard, and the massive amount of stuff she posts every day that she's pulling out of there is unbelievable. Because totes can work for you so many ways as far as watering things around it, keeping moisture under it. So if you've got big plants growing next to it, the plants will send their roots underneath the tote in your yard on the ground to get moisture in case it's dry. It's got so many great features to it. You've got control a lot of times with snails or critters with a tote. You have more control when it comes to critters in a tote than you do on the ground. I use tool for everything, but you can tool this so many different ways. This is not on tools, so I don't want to get into that. So totes are my favorite. And the main thing here I wanted to really talk about was that setup. Because here, you see how wide it is. This is so easy to fill up with soil from your yard, your garden. Fill the whole bottom up with dried leaves and plants and weeds and everything on the bottom, and then good soil on the top. If you don't have any, you buy a bag of soil. And you only have to do one tote at a time. If you want to set up 20 totes, you only have to do one at a time. You don't have to fill the whole thing up with soil and then try to figure out where you're going to plant everything. You literally are just putting your energy and time into one tote at a time. And that's why I like totes. I'm going to be talking so much about totes and containers. And I do grow in the ground. I've got some zucchini right now that are that big. I'll show you. And they're growing in the ground. But you know what? They're being fed by a tote. That's why I've got them growing in the ground. I'm growing them in the ground up against the block wall, where Gary told me there's only that much soil because there's a cement footing that comes out 6 foot. It's all cement, and some soil got pushed up there. And they are being fed on the water coming out of the tote. And they're growing massive zucchini, growing in the ground, that much soil, but the nutrients coming out of the tote next to it is just growing this zucchini in the ground phenomenally. So anyways, that's it. It's just think about things, what will work for you. The most important thing is to grow something. We all need to grow something. We're all basically the 21st century homesteaders now, trying to get something that we know we are growing on our own. And think about what will work for you. And ask me questions. I'll try to answer them. Please understand, I get tens of thousands of questions now and comments. It seems like a week, if not a day at times. And I'm trying to go through them the best I can. If I missed anybody, it's only because I didn't see it. It's just, again, anything you get from me is strictly in my opinion. It doesn't mean it's right. It's just my opinion and what works for me. Think about what will work for you. See if you like the idea of totes. We're going to get into so many more fun things on totes. I am so excited with some of the stuff I'm doing now, I actually have pictured on what I'm going to be doing as well, that I will be sharing everything with you. But think about that before you go buy a bed, a long bed, and think about what will work for you. If the long bed's going to work for you, a long garden bed up on the legs, and it's easier for you, then that's fine. Just be aware that you've got to set the whole thing up with soil before you start to plant in it. With this, you're going to set them up as you go, and you'll be able to pace yourself, and that's what I love. And when I do this, and I do the other chair garden I'm going to set up, it's going to be one chair at a time. And then I can meanwhile have the other totes sitting there and start doing what I'm doing here, throwing in matter and cleaning up the yard and leaves and stuff, and getting them ready at my pace. So my garden is working for me. I'm not working for my garden except for going out there afterwards and watering it. So I hope I've given you some ideas. I love my totes. I'm going to love them more, I think, this spring and this winter as I set up a lot of fun things. So with that, have a wonderful day. And don't forget to eat what you grow. And think about it. Do what will work best for you. Bye-bye. Hope you did not go off.